So welcome to anybody watching these videos. This is what I'm going to call my first video on this series about how to use ArcGIS Pro for foresters. There was a video previous to this one, but it was more introductory in nature about how to use or how to get started with ArcGIS Pro and the things that you need to be thinking about before you ever get to this point of actually starting to make a map. So this video will actually be making a map and adding data to it. And this is the map that we'll use continuously through this series. So I would recommend following along with me, especially if you're new to GIS or new to ArcGIS Pro, and then you'll be able to, click all the things that I click and learn as you do, and then hopefully that'll give everybody a good base for how to use ArcGIS Pro. So to get started, the very first thing that we need to think about before we even open up a map is our filing system. So the way that I like to do it as a consultant is I like to have a file called landowners, and then within that landowners file, I'll have a file for each individual person. So Mrs. Smith, Mr. Jones, whoever my clients are. But for this, we'll do something a little bit different. So for those of you who don't know, we'll just make one off of our C drive. We'll make a file off of our C drive. So if we go down here to our search bar, we can type in File Explorer. We'll open that up. And then over on this left side, we'll scroll down and we'll click on our C drive down here. And then I've already got a file made, but if you want to make a new file, you just right click, go up down to New, and then Folder. And then you can rename that folder whatever you want to. But I already have one called ArcGIS Pro Class. So we'll double click that and open it up. And so for this series or tutorial or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to have two. I'm going to have county data and GIS data. So, or actually that's supposed to be GPS data. So I'm sort of just pretending that I have GPS data as though I had a GPS unit and I went out and I marked the SMZ, and we'll get to adding that to the map later. But this county data is very important. So in North Carolina, we have a website called NC1 Map, and we can go ahead and navigate to that now. You just open up Chrome or whatever you use for Google and type in NC1 Map. Search that. It's the first one that pops up. And then you scroll down to where you see this direct data downloads. And then you can do file type or select data, go down to parcels, area, and you can do whatever area you want to. We're going to be doing Chatham County for this one, and you can do whatever county is best for you. This is just the individual example that I'll be using for this tutorial. And then I always like to do the most up-to-date version. And then get data, and then that will download it into your downloads folder. Another thing that you can do here if you want to is download the aerial imagery. Now ArcPro has aerial imagery embedded in it that you can use. That's fine. But if you want to do something special, or if you just want to be able to use a different set of aerial imagery, you can do this as well. But so in the select data, you go down to imagery. Again, select whatever county you want, Chatham, and then select the most up-to-date version. Unless for some reason you wanted an older version to backtrack maybe some older forest operations or something like that. But when you download those, and I've already downloaded them just for time's sake, they'll show up in your downloads folder, and then you can just get them from here. And so one thing that you need to do is be able to extract this file. So they'll download as zip files, and that's that .zip. And that it'll have a little icon with a little zipper going through the file. But you can just right click on that and then go to extract all, and you'll get a little window that looks like this, and then you can just click extract, and then that will add this new file here without the zipper, named the exact same thing but without the zipper, and then that will have all of your files in it. So if we go back, so these two are the ones that I've already done, and if you just copy and paste them into, go back to your C drive and copy and paste them into whatever you named your, in my instance, this ArcGIS Pro Class file, and then just paste them into there. And then we'll be able to reference these files from our ArcGIS Pro application a lot easier than trying to put them directly on your desktop or in some documents folder that may or may not be difficult to find later. So after we've done this, then we've got everything set up, and we can look in here and we can see our county data. So here we have our parcels. This is our imagery. And then this is our GPS data. So when you download GPS data, you really only care about 4 files. You've got a DBF, a PRJ, a SHP, and a SHX. Those are the files that matter. The rest of these files don't particularly matter, but it's just important to remember that if you are familiar with GIS, you know that a SHP file is a shape file. That's what we typically upload into a GIS software to be able to see what a line looks like, or a polygon, or points, or whatever. But if you see this one SHP file, you do need all the files, and there's excess ones here, but you have to have this SHP, SHX, PRJ, and DBF at the absolute minimum. So just for anybody using a GPS, just remember that. So after we have all this stuff organized, we can X out of File Explorer. We don't need NC1 Map anymore, and then we can start our ArcGIS Pro application. So once we've started it and it's opened up, we'll see this. This is our blank screen. And you shouldn't have anything in this bottom area. This is where all of the maps that you will have made will exist. And if you've already made one, then you're probably seeing it here. So to make a new map, we just go up here and click this map button. And then we can name this whatever we want to. So we'll go ahead and name this one. Go ahead and name it ArcGIS Pro Class. And then we'll just leave this location to wherever it wants to. Now, sometimes when I'm making one for an individual landowner, I'll save it to that landowner's folder like we talked about earlier, but this is just as easy and honestly a little bit simpler for people that may have a little bit of trouble navigating File Explorer. So it takes a minute to boot up, but once it does, we're left with this blank screen up here. Or no, it's not blank, it does have a map on it, but it doesn't have any sort of detail. There's no lines, there's nothing, it's just, bare bones. So there's always 10 different ways to do the same thing in ArcGIS Pro, and that's something that you need to remember. And just because I do something one way does not mean that that is the right way. But to go ahead and add data on this map, we'll go up here to our map tab, and then we'll go to add data. And a lot of buttons in Arc Pro have 2 sections. So you can see with this add data button, there's a lower section that has a little arrow, and then an upper section that's the actual button. And if you click this lower section, you can see all these different things, but we really don't care about the top section. This is just sort of think about it as the default. So once that pops up, and this is looking for any sort of data that ArcGIS Pro recognizes and can add, for instance, a shapefile. So if we scroll down, or let's see, we go to PC, this PC, then we can see our C drive, local disk C drive. Double click that. Then we'll navigate to our folder that we saved everything to. Go to County Data, Chatham, and then here we'll see if we downloaded this from NC1 Map, you'll actually see 2 file types. And you'll see one says POLY at the end, and the other says PT. So these are points and polygons. For us in forestry, polygons are what we want. That's the actual file for the property. So we'll go ahead and click OK, and we'll add that. So this is Chatham County. Right, this is located in the central, part of North Carolina. If I zoom out and everything loads up, we'll be able to see this a little bit better. And I have a landowner just randomly selected just to try and help with some of the future project or future things that I want to show with this for this tutorial. But so to add GPS data, it's the same way. We go to add, and then we can navigate back to this PC. C drive, go back to our folder, and we'll see our GPS data, and then we'll see our shapefile. So this is just a GPS line feature. This is probably what you're going to download when you, that's probably what the line is going to read when you download it off of a GPS unit. It'll just say GPS line, GPS polygon, GPS point. But whenever I'm GPSing things, I just GPS them as a line, because once you see it on a map, that's an SMZ. Or that's a property boundary. There's very few instances where you're like, well, I don't know what this line belongs to. It's normally pretty logical. So this can be one of the tricky parts. So one thing that I like to do is, well, we won't get into that quite yet, but this can be one of the tricky parts, is actually finding where your landowner is. And most people in forestry kind of have a good idea of the area that they work, and they know this, this landowner is off of such and such road and can find it like that. I know this one's down here because I added this GPS data and I can see the little green lines from it. So we can see here, this is just, I'll go ahead and select it. This is the landowner that we're going to use. And we can't see anything right now because it's blocked because of the way that the shape file is colored, and we'll change that in a second. But we know that that's our property owner, and then we can see these lines that we added, and these are our GPS lines. These are our fake lines, and you can see they're pretty straight. If anybody's ever used a GPS unit, you typically get a pretty squiggly looking line. But these are something that I just drew really quick and just we're sort of pretending like they're a GPS line since I didn't have any data readily available. So the first thing that we're going to do is change this symbology. So this is what symbology is, basically the color. Think about it as the color. So this is not very helpful. This is blocking all of our imagery that could be below this, where we could actually see things like what is a pine tree, what is a hardwood, where is a house, where is a field, things like that. So this is actually pretty simple to change. If we go over here to the left to our contents pane, and if you don't have this open, the quickest way to do it, you go up to the search bar, you can, this is the best way, or at least the simplest way to find things if they're lost. So we can just type in contents. My keyboard will work. And then we can see show contents pane on the ribbon. So we can click that and it'll typically pop up for you. And you may have to play around with it and get everything situated. Mine is already situated because I use ArcGIS Pro. But you may have to take these tabs, and these tabs can float around. So it may have popped out like this and just be floating in the middle of your screen, and then you'll have to get it on the right side of your screen like that, or on the left side of your screen, sorry. So the way that you do it is, once you have this contents pane open, you can click on the actual coloring. This is, again, what we call symbology. So you can click on the symbology on this side, and then it will open the symbology pane to the right, and it will just automatically open this. And again, this pane might open randomly. It may open on a different screen, or it may open up sort of in the center, and then you'll just have to mess with it to get it back in the center. But what we do is we go over to properties, go to color, select no color, and if you're not here, this is under the little symbol tab. It looks like a little paintbrush, and then outline color. We can change this to whatever. I always like red, and then I always like to change this outline width to 2, just to make it easier to see. And then when we click apply, then everything's hollow and we can see through it. But we don't have any aerial imagery, which is what really helps us in forestry. So this is, again, is pretty simple to add. We go up here to base map under our map tab. And then there's a lot of different base maps that we can use. And this is one of the big advantages of ArcGIS Pro is having all these just sort of at your fingertips. One that can be potentially pretty useful is your topographic maps. Those are pretty useful. This USA topo is my favorite personally. These gray maps are pretty nice depending on what kind of maps you want to make. But my favorite is this imagery hybrid. So this will have aerial imagery overlaid on, or with road names and creek names overlaid on. So we can still see that we have these road names and be able to navigate, but we also have this, pretty good quality aerial imagery. And just for the sake of showing it at this point, we can add that other imagery that we downloaded. So go back to add data, county data, and here we have our aerial imagery. So then we can sort of compare, do we like this imagery better? And if we want to hide something, if we want to hide a layer, for instance, the aerial imagery, or like this polygon layer for our parcels, we can go over here to this contents and just click the checkbox, and then that will hide them. And it won't actually get rid of them off the map. They're still there. They're just hidden from it. So we can compare, okay, this looks nicer, right? This data that we downloaded from the Chatham County NC1 page is a lot better quality compared to the default. So we can use that to help us digitize in the future, and we can do a couple other fun things with it. But So right now, this is what we're going to do to add data. So one more thing that I want to talk to you about is the difference between the different things that your mouse can do. So your mouse can really do two things. It can select and it can explore. So again, if we go up to this map tab on your ribbon, this upper section is what I'm calling the ribbon. We can click this explore, and that will give us a little hand, right? And we can click and drag and move to areas that we want to see. If we're zoomed in, we want to move area over to see the different sections of this area. We can do that. The other thing that we can do is select. So if we click on this select, again clicking the upper section, the default section of the button instead of this down arrow, then we can click things to edit them in particular. So one reason that we would do that is if we want to again edit this specific file. So if this is the landowner that I'm working with, we'll just call them Mr. Jones, just for the sake of a random name. I don't want the rest of these polygons. This is just excess data to me. So one thing that I can do is I can select it, and if we have other parcels that we need to select, we can select them too by holding the Shift key and then clicking on them, and then we can just select as many as we want to. But in this case, I only want this one. And then since it's in our NC Chatham Parcels Polygon shapefile, we can right click on this, go down to Data, Export Features, click on it, and that will open up this little window right here. So we can rename this Output Feature class. We'll name this as Property Line. So one thing that I want to stress here is that we're going to continue to add landowners to all of these shapefiles. So when we're making these shapefiles, we really only need to make them once. And from here on out, we'll just add different landowners. If we're calling this one Mr. Jones, we'll add Mrs. Smith later to this property line shapefile. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And here we go. So we can turn off our Chatham County parcels, and then we're left with just Mr. Jones here, right? So another important thing to always remember is when I turn this back on, you can see this blue line, and that means that it's selected. We want to make sure that we're always clicking this clear button, and I will 100% make sure that I don't do this at some point, and then I will get this messed up, and it'll serve as a good example for you. But if there's ever something that you do to a polygon, for instance, calculate acres or deleting a section or something like that, and it goes wrong, it's probably because you had something selected that you didn't intend to be selected. So say, for example, I have all three of these sections selected. If I calculate acres on this entire shapefile, which would be all of these polygons, it's only going to calculate acres on the ones that I have selected, which is good and bad. But typically for people that are starting out in GIS, it's bad because I want acres calculated on everything, not just this one random thing that I accidentally selected at some point. So again, it's always important to click this clear button. So now we have our aerial imagery, our GPS data, our property line data for this landowner, and then we can start making edits on whatever we feel like the next step is. So that's probably going to be delineating shape files for this landowner. So we see that we have this pretty pine stand down here, a little bit of mixed hardwood with some pine scattered in it, this GPS creek that we have, this house, these pastures. If you zoom in on the non downloaded imagery, you can actually see cows there. So we know that these are agriculture pastures, and that'll be beneficial depending on who you are. If you're a consultant like me, I don't really care about that as much, unless I'm writing a management plan trying to get them into the tax program, in which case these acres can be added to that tax plan. And one final thing that I want to show you before I overwhelm you too much is a lot of people like red overlay or red imagery. It's where vegetation, instead of reflecting green, reflects as red, and it's really complicated about how that exactly works. But it's actually pretty simple to do. So if we add that imagery that we downloaded, and you cannot do this with the default imagery, you have to actually download imagery. You can see here on our contents pane, it says red, green, and blue, right? And it says band 1, 2, and 3. If we click on this, click on any of these 3 bands, we'll get this symbology pane open again. And again, we see this red, green, and blue, bands 1, 2, and 3, and then this alpha. And we'll leave alpha as none, but you can change that depending on what you want the aerial imagery to look like. And we change band 1 to band 4, band 2 to band 3, and then this blue band to band 2. And then we get this near infrared or infrared imagery that people like. I had a friend one time who was partially colorblind, and this really helped him be able to see trees better and delineate this hardwood from pine. And you can see this really makes those pine trees in this hardwood stand pop versus the default imagery is a little bit harder to see. You know, this area up here where I'm circling on the mouse, like as of now, like you can't really see anything yet. You see a little bit of green right here and here, but when you turn this infrared imagery back on, you can really see these individual pine trees. And it just depends on how much you care about that. To me, it's not that big of a deal. I can typically pick the green of the pine trees out without having to do this, but a lot of people really like this infrared imagery. And to get it back, all we do is just set the bands back to 1, 2, and 3. And then we're left back with our regular looking imagery. So that's not necessarily something that you need to follow along with unless you just really like that type of imagery, if it helps you for whatever reason. But that is it for this video, and thank you for watching, and I will talk to you on the next video.